I know it's been a long time, but it's finally here. Me putting the S in the fantasy lands of this channel's name. Because let's be honest, recently this channel has been Kate in Genshin land, and while I do love Genshin, I also want to wander around many fantasy places. And so, Wuthering Waves. This is another gacha that I've been playing for a while, kind of on the side. I got interested in it when it came out, uh, but at that time, my poor old laptop was just barely surviving. Wuwa was just a bit too much for it, and so I had to wait. Fast forward about a year and some months when I got my new computer and I installed it again in order to finally catch up to the story just before the 3.0 patch. Which brings us to today. After lots of sickness that made this video almost impossible, I can finally say that I have truly experienced the 3.0 version of the game for myself. And what a patch! I do have many thoughts, but first, spoilers. I'll be talking about the main story, the exploration, features, practically everything and anything from this last patch, so you've been warned. Let's start with the story. I was so excited that the next region will be centering around a school for resonators. I mean, while school absolutely sucks in the real world, there are so many cool things that can be done in fantasy and in games with that setting. And considering that I am a huge Harry Potter fan, you can imagine that I was really looking forward to everything. So, the portal to Lahai-Roi was opened, and Rover was set to go alongside Chisa. But they had to go one at a time, and Chisa volunteered to go first. And at that moment, I was like, oh, it is on! She's going to get lost within that temporal space, and we'll have to find her, and all of that will finally connect with the reason she ended up in Honami City to begin with. And with those thoughts, I entered the portal as well. Now, let me tell you, when I first started WoWa, I wasn't really impressed with the opening scenes. I even vividly remember being asked by a character, don't I want to find out who I, the rover, am? And I answered, not really, because, well, I was still disappointed. But when I experienced the voyage to Rina Sita, that was just one of the most epic openings to a new chapter ever. And now for Lahai-Roi, Wuwa absolutely did it again. Everything that happens is just chef's kiss. Meeting the mysterious person in the in-between space, adding that mystery to everything else, then exiting and seeing Linnea for the first time, thinking about what her motives are and whose side she's on really, and then finally riding on that bike, fearing for my life as the void worm comes at us again and again. That opening alone was 10 out of 10. But then we got to Star Torch Academy, and a lot of my expectations did not come to fruition. Chisa was fine. Her story finished with basically her saying hi to us, and then the school life was just getting through registration, and off we were to explore the cavern that was home to the academy. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some really cool things going on, like burning of the cassette that brought to life the memories we've collected until here. But all my expectations for Chisa, for courses and such, were put on hold indefinitely. There was another crisis that Rover had to solve, another big monster to be defeated. And so I met Mornie, learned about their plan for the artificial sun, and understood why Linnea was acting so suspicious. She wasn't really Linnea, because the real one had died a while ago. This Linnea had pretended to be her so that she could attend Star Torch Academy. Unlucky for her, the identity she had stolen was that of a Fraxidus spy. But with Rover vouching for her, in the end she's allowed to stay at the academy. So long as she takes the exams and starts from year one. I don't envy her. Anyway, fast forward a few weeks and it was time to meet with Mornier again. I won't go into much detail about the second half of the main story, but basically, we have Mornier to thank for the artificial stars in the underground cavern, and this man for helping us to put the new artificial sun that would make survival in the cavern possible from now on as well. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the story, especially the part with the Shaper. In just a few minutes, we see a whole story of duty and self sacrifice that is absolute cinema. But that is what brings me to the problem I have with Wua's story. It isn't bad. Actually, many of the ideas that are put into it are absolutely brilliant. However, every time I experience a story from there, I feel like I'm getting the summary or conclusion of it. I want to actually see the story unfold, to see these characters, both the NPCs and the playable ones, go through their stories and evolve alongside the main character. But instead, I feel like each quest has a particular character that is the center of it and has a story that is close to its resolution. And there is little time for anyone or anything else. And when that chapter finishes, the character is, well, finished as well. Let me be honest. While I personally find this as a flaw in storytelling, I've also been thinking that maybe that is by design. And no, not the design of the gacha that wants you to always want the next shiny character. Rover is someone who is the arbiter, a higher being that has already walked through this world, left a mark, and a set of rules. And now that they're back, maybe they're just there to witness the conclusion of these stories they themselves had already set in motion long ago. After all, the Shaper, as well as the Sentinels we've met before, were waiting specifically for their permission. That in itself is an interesting premise for Rover's arc and could tie to why the Fraxidas are, at least on the surface, simply trying to sow chaos. But while I can appreciate that, I'm still left with wanting more as the one who actually comes to experience the story. For me, the conclusion is simply not enough. But anyway, there is much more to Wuwa than the main story. So let me start with the elephant in the room, the bike. Practically the new main feature of the game. And it's implemented perfectly. It's an inseparable part of the story. And I absolutely loved the times I got to use it during the main story quests. It is also well positioned mechanically in the game. It has its own levels and upgrades, ties to combat and the environment. It is practically flawless. So now that I've sung its praises, please prepare for me to say something absolutely blasphemous. I don't use it. Look, as a gamer, I can appreciate it and the way it was put in the game. Game design wise, it's perfect. But as someone who really enjoys just strolling around in games and enjoying the view, and someone who really, really doesn't like bikes in any world, real or imaginary, it's just not for me. And that's okay. I did feel like an old lady going, "Ugh, kids these days with their bikes. Back in my day, we had to use our feet." But I'm just not the driving sort. And it's not just that I want to appreciate the view. I want to be able to change direction immediately. And you can't do it with a bike. Yes, I know that physics exist and that I can't drive. Just let me be an old lady. I've accepted it. As for the regions, there were so many places that were absolutely breathtaking. Also, I don't know who spent so much time on making all these flower meadows, but they're simply amazing. I've been finding them everywhere I go, on foot, as you know already, and I've been just snapping pictures left and right. Other than that, I personally most enjoyed the areas where the Roya lived, as well as the quests with the Soliskin, these cute guys. There is a quest where you get to collect them and then they follow you around and solve puzzles for you. And then at the end, you know what? I won't spoil it, but it was awesome. As for the other zones, well, restoring a highway was certainly something I hadn't done many times in games before, but you already know how I feel about the bike. That said, the underground tunnel is amazing. That is the only place I actually got on the bike and just enjoyed a ride for once. And finally, Star Torch Academy. Maybe I shouldn't have watched all those trailers. My expectations were completely off. I never felt like I had a fantasy school life there. Yes, you meet professors, although I'd argue only in name, and join clubs and things like this, but there aren't really courses or such. And I was really disappointed because, well, pretty much the same thing happens in Hogwarts Legacy as well. I don't know if you know this game because it's really old, but Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, that was the best fantasy school experience I've had in a game, and I really want something like it. Going to class, getting challenges, and then entering the library just to find a book that wants to eat you, so you blast it to pieces. Is it just me who wants to do that? I'm probably coping at this point, but maybe in the next patch we'll finally get something like it. I mean, Rover will even get a new outfit, a uniform, and there is so much that can be done in a school or university setting. Please, please just do it. Anyway, before I finish, I did enjoy this new region and story, but also I do miss Rinasita a bit. The environment there was just amazing. From the spooky areas to the tranquil ones, all of them imbued with that fantasy feel that I always look forward to in game worlds. But anyway, I will continue playing and probably make a full review at the end of version 3. But for now, thank you for watching and see you another time. Bye bye.